They fired her at 9:18 in the morning, hands still covered in a dying general's blood, standing in the director's office at Ridgemont Valley Medical Center, just outside Washington, D.C. Clara Briggs, trauma nurse, 12 years on the floor, terminated on the spot for saving a man's life. No hearing, no appeal, badge on the desk, walk out. But exactly 11 minutes later, every window in that hospital started shaking. A Navy helicopter dropped onto the roof, and armed personnel stormed inside shouting one name, hers. Because the woman they just fired wasn't just a nurse, she was the only combat medic alive who could stop what was coming. Before we begin, take 1 second to subscribe and follow this story all the way to the end. Drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see just how far this story travels. Clara Briggs heard the trauma bay doors slam open at 9:03 a.m., and her hands stopped mid-stitch. She was closing a laceration on a teenager's forearm, routine work, the kind she could do blindfolded after 12 years in emergency medicine. But something in the way those doors hit the wall made her look up. Not the sound, the urgency behind it. Two paramedics pushed through first, moving fast, their faces locked in that expression she had seen 1,000 times. The one that said they had been holding their breath for too long, and the patient on that stretcher was running out of time. Male, mid-60s, the first paramedic shouted. Collapsed during transport, heart rate erratic, GCS dropping fast, possible cardiac event. Nurses scrambled, techs rushed forward. Dr. Nathan Cross, the attending physician, pushed through the crowd and took position at the head of the stretcher. Clara finished her stitch, snapped off her gloves, and moved toward the commotion. She didn't have to. The patient wasn't assigned to her. Nobody asked her to come, but something pulled her forward, an instinct she hadn't felt in years, something older than nursing, something forged in a place she tried every single day to forget. The man on the stretcher wore a dark navy blazer, service medals pinned near his collar, a ring on his left hand, thick, military issue. His face was gray, not pale, gray, the kind of color that didn't come from a heart attack. Clara's stomach dropped. He's going into cardiac failure, Dr. Cross barked. Get me an epi-drip and call cardiology, now. Nurses moved, monitors screamed. The room became a blur of shouted orders and rushing hands. But Clara didn't move with them. She stood 2 feet from the stretcher, staring at the man's hands. His fingers were curled tight, unnaturally tight, like the nerves had stopped trusting the muscles. She had seen that before. Once, in a place that no civilian hospital ever trained for. She stepped closer and pressed her thumb against the man's eyelid, lifting it gently. Briggs, what are you doing? A nurse hissed beside her. Clara didn't answer. She watched the pupil snap tight under the penlight. Too fast, too sharp. That wasn't a cardiac response. That was neurotoxic. Her blood went cold. He doesn't need epi, Clara said. Nobody heard her. Or maybe they did and decided it wasn't worth acknowledging. Dr. Cross leaned over the patient, barking orders. Push the atropine. Where's my cardiology consult? Someone get a crash cart in here. He doesn't need epi, Clara said again, louder this time. He needs an antidote. Cross froze mid-sentence. He turned slowly, and the look on his face could have cut glass. Excuse me? His pupils are pinpoint reactive, Clara said, her voice steady but her pulse hammering. Nail beds are cyanotic with purple discoloration, not blue. His jaw is rigid, but his chest movement is shallow and irregular. That's not matching any cardiac pattern I've ever seen. This isn't a heart attack. Cross stared at her like she had just spoken another language. Briggs, you're a trauma nurse. Step back and let us handle this. He was poisoned, Clara said. The room went quiet for half a second. One of those silences that feels like the air has been sucked out of the building. Then Cross shook his head. That's ridiculous. Step back, now. If you push epi into a system flooded with neurotoxin, his heart will seize in under 2 minutes, Clara said. He won't crash. He'll flatline, and you won't bring him back. Cross's jaw tightened. He pointed at her. You are out of line, Briggs. I'm the attending. This is my call. Then make the right one, she said. He didn't. Push the epi, Cross ordered. Clara watched the nurse reach for the syringe, watched her draw the dose, watched her move toward the IV line. And in that moment, something inside Clara Briggs broke open. A door she had sealed shut 6 years ago, bolted, buried under a new name, a new life, a new career that was supposed to keep her safe and invisible. She moved, fast, faster than anyone expected from a 44-year-old nurse on her 10th hour of a 12-hour shift. She stepped past Cross, pushed the nurse's hand aside, and ripped open the emergency toxicology tray. Briggs, Cross roared, what the hell are you doing? Her fingers flew across the vial labels. Pralidoxime, atropine sulfate. No, there, buried at the back of the tray, a vial most doctors in this hospital had never even touched. She pulled it out, drew the dose, and before anyone could grab her arm, she injected it straight into the general's IV line. Someone stop her, Cross shouted. She's going to kill him. She's not authorized, another doctor yelled. Call security. Clara didn't hear any of it. Her eyes were locked on the monitor. Her lips moved silently, counting. 1 second, 2, 3. The heart rate flatlined. The room erupted. Cross lunged toward the bed. A nurse screamed. Someone grabbed Clara's arm and yanked her backward. 4 seconds. 5. Then the monitor spiked. A pulse, weak, thin, but real, crawled across the screen. 6 seconds. 7. The pulse strengthened. The rhythm steadied. Color began creeping back into the general's face. Slow, like dawn breaking after a long, dark night. 8 seconds. The general's eyes snapped open. He inhaled sharply, chest jerking upward, fingers twitching. His gaze swept the room wildly until it found Clara's face. And when it did, it stopped. Locked. Held. Recognition flooded his eyes. Then fear. Then something worse. Relief. Briggs, he rasped. His voice barely made it past his lips. Clara Briggs. Every person in that trauma bay went still. Clara's breath caught. She hadn't heard anyone say her full name like that in 6 years. Not since the desert. Not since the fire and the screaming radios and the outpost collapsing around her. Sir, she whispered, leaning closer. You need to stay still. They told me you were dead, he said. His hand trembled as it reached for hers. Your team, Viper Squad, they said you died in the blast. Clara felt the floor shift under her feet. Not physically, something deeper. Something inside her chest cracking open like old concrete. Don't talk, she whispered. Please, just rest. Briggs, the voice came from behind her, cold, flat. The kind of voice that doesn't ask, it commands. Clara turned. Director Raymond Keyes stood at the entrance to the trauma bay, arms crossed, face carved from stone. My office, now. She looked back at the general. His eyes were still on her, filled with something she couldn't name. Warning, maybe. Or apology. She followed Keyes down the hallway. Every step felt heavier than the last. She could feel the stairs, nurses at their stations, techs in the corridor, a resident who stepped aside like she was contagious. Keyes' office door slammed behind them. What the hell do you think you just did? His voice shook with controlled fury. You administered an unauthorized medication to a critical patient without a physician's order. Do you have any idea what kind of liability you just created? He was poisoned, Clara said calmly. You are a nurse, Keyes snapped, slamming his palm on the desk. Not a toxicologist, not a physician, not a pharmacist. You do not have the authority to override an attending doctor in my hospital. Ever. He would have died. He almost did because of you. No, Clara said quietly. He almost died because nobody in that room recognized a neurotoxin when it was right in front of them. Keyes stared at her. His face reddened. A vein pulsed at his temple. You're done, he said. Effective immediately. Turn in your badge. Clara didn't argue. She didn't defend herself. She didn't explain that she knew what that toxin was because she had watched it kill people she loved. She simply reached into her scrub pocket, pulled out her hospital ID badge, and placed it on his desk. He wasn't crashing, she said one last time. He was poisoned with a neurotoxin, the same compound that... Her voice faltered. Her throat closed around the words. Get out, Keyes said. Before I call security. Clara walked out of the office and into the hallway. Heads turned. Conversation stopped mid-word. A group of nurses near the break room looked down at their clipboards the moment she passed. One doctor leaned toward another and muttered something she caught the tail end of. Always thought she was more than a nurse. Clara kept walking. Her hands trembled at her sides. Not from the firing, not from the humiliation, from the realization forming in her mind like poison spreading through clean water. That toxin, that exact neurotoxin. She had seen it only once before in her life, at the Viper Squad outpost in Syria, the day everything ended, the day her team was obliterated in an explosion that the military called an operational failure and the intelligence community called regrettable. Only one group had ever weaponized that specific compound, and that group was supposed to be dead, every last one of them, including her. Clara reached the front lobby. The revolving doors were right there. 10 steps and she would be outside, free, invisible again. She could disappear, change her name, move to another state, start over, again. She took the first step. Then the floor shook. Not violently, just enough to make everyone stop talking. A low vibration, deep, mechanical, growing louder by the second. The receptionist looked up from her desk. Is that a helicopter? People moved toward the windows. Through the glass, Clara could see dust whipping across the parking lot. Shadows crossed the ceiling as something massive passed overhead. Then the sound hit. The unmistakable thunder of military-grade rotor blades slicing through the air directly above the building. A security guard's radio crackled. We've got a Navy helicopter on the roof. Repeat, Navy aircraft has landed on the helipad. The lobby erupted. Staff rushed toward the stairwell. Doctors pushed forward. Residents crowded the hallway. Everyone wanted to see. Clara didn't move. Her heart hammered so hard she could feel it in her teeth. Then a paramedic burst through the stairwell door, out of breath, holding a clipboard. They're asking for someone. He looked down at the paper, squinting. Someone named Clara Briggs? Every head in the lobby turned toward her. Clara's blood turned to ice. Footsteps thundered across the ceiling. The building shook again as the helicopter's rotors wound down. Then a voice, amplified, commanding, cutting through every wall and floor of the hospital, boomed from the roof. We need Clara Briggs immediately. The general has identified the toxin. He will not survive without her. The silence that followed was absolute. Every doctor who had looked away, every nurse who had whispered, every staff member who had dismissed her as just a nurse who overstepped. Even Director Raymond Keyes, who stood in the corridor with a face drained of all color. All of them heard it. All of them understood. They hadn't fired a nurse. They had fired a decorated combat medic, the sole survivor of Viper Squad, and the only person in this entire building who had ever treated this kind of poisoning and lived. A uniformed officer burst through the stairwell door. His boots hit the tile hard. He scanned the lobby and locked onto Clara instantly, like he had studied her face on the flight over. "Clara Briggs?" he barked. She didn't nod, didn't speak, just stood there, breath caught somewhere between her throat and her chest. "Ma'am, come with me, now." Director Keyes rushed forward, face flushed. "Officer, this woman has been terminated. She is no longer permitted to. The officer stepped into Keys's space without blinking. With all due respect, sir, I'm not here to ask your permission. A decorated Delta Force general gave a direct request. Protocol is not your concern right now. His survival is. Keys opened his mouth. Nothing came out. He stepped aside. Clara looked at the officer, then at the stairwell door behind him, then at the ceiling where the faint vibration of rotor blades still hummed through the concrete. She knew what waited up there. Not just a dying general, not just a military debrief, but the past she had buried, the sand, the gunfire, the blast that tore Viper Squad apart, the screaming radio she could never unhear. 6 years she had run from it. 6 years she had hidden behind scrubs and 12-hour shifts, and a name that nobody connected to a classified file. But the past had found her, and it had landed on the roof. Clara Briggs took a breath, and she walked toward the stairwell. The stairwell was narrow and cold, and Clara took the steps 2 at a time. The officer ahead of her moved fast, but she kept pace without effort. Muscle memory. The kind that never leaves, no matter how many years you spend pretending you're someone else. Her legs burned by the 4th flight. Her mind burned worse. The general had said her name. Not Nurse, not Briggs. He had called her Clara. Like he knew her. Like he had known her for years. And then those words. They told me you were dead. She hadn't been dead. She had been hiding. And until 9 minutes ago, she thought hiding had worked. 9:31 a.m. The rooftop door slammed open and wind hit her like a wall. The helicopter sat on the landing pad with its rotors winding down, throwing gusts across the concrete that whipped her scrubs against her body. 4 Navy personnel stood in tight formation around the aircraft, scanning every corner of the roof with their hands on their sidearms. Commander Jack Tierney stepped forward, tall, square-jawed, with the kind of calm that only comes from 20 years of walking into chaos and walking out alive. "Clara Briggs," he said. "Yes. The general is inside. He's been asking for you since he regained consciousness. He won't speak to anyone else." Clara climbed into the helicopter cabin. The general lay on a stretcher, oxygen mask over his face, an IV line taped to his forearm. His skin still carried that grayish tint, but his eyes were sharp, too sharp for a man who had flatlined 8 minutes ago. General Marcus Holt pulled the oxygen mask down with a trembling hand. "Close the door," he said to Tierney. The commander hesitated. "That's an order." Tierney pulled the cabin door shut. The wind noise dropped to a low hum. Now it was just the 3 of them, Clara, the general, and 6 years of silence. "Sit down, Briggs," Holt said. She didn't sit. "Sir, you need to keep that mask on. Your oxygen levels." "My oxygen levels are the least of my problems." He coughed, wincing. "And they're the least of yours." Clara's chest tightened. Holt looked at her the way a man looks at a ghost he's been waiting to see. "I ran Viper Squad's oversight committee. I signed off on every mission your team ever took, including the last one." Clara felt her knees weaken. She grabbed the cabin rail to steady herself. "You knew about us," she whispered. "I knew about all of you. 6 operators. Best toxicology field unit the military ever assembled. And I knew what happened in Syria." "Then you know it wasn't an accident." Holt's jaw tightened. "I know it wasn't supposed to be survivable." The word hit Clara like a fist to the sternum. Survivable. Like her life was a miscalculation in someone's spreadsheet. "Who?" she asked. Her voice was low, steady, but her hands shook at her sides. "Who ordered it?" "That's what I was coming to Washington to testify about." Closed session, Senate Intelligence Committee. "I had the files, Clara, the real files, not the ones they sanitized." He paused, struggling for breath. "Someone found out. And this morning, before I even reached the hearing, they got to me." "The neurotoxin," Clara said. "VX7 variant. The same compound your team discovered in that Syrian outpost. The same one the program was designed to produce." Clara's throat closed. She had spent 6 years trying to forget those 3 characters. VX7. The toxin that Viper Squad had found stockpiled in an underground lab that wasn't supposed to exist, funded by accounts that weren't supposed to be traceable, authorized by people who weren't supposed to be involved. "We reported it," Clara said, her voice breaking despite herself. "Dom, Sergeant Farrell, he filed the report through secure channels. We followed protocol. We did everything right." "I know you did," Holt said softly. "And 48 hours later, your outpost exploded." 9:38 a.m. Clara closed her eyes. She could feel it coming back. The heat, the pressure wave, the sound of the radio cutting to static. Dominic Farrell's voice on the comms shouting her name. Then nothing. Then darkness and rubble and the taste of blood in her mouth. "I was told everyone died," she whispered. "All 5 of them. I was told I was the only survivor and that Viper Squad never officially existed. They wiped the records. They moved me to a civilian hospital under a new service file. They told me to forget. And you believe them?" "I didn't have a choice." Holt reached out and gripped her wrist. His hand was cold, but his grip was iron. "You have a choice now. The person who poisoned me is inside this hospital." Clara's stomach dropped. "That's not possible. The paramedics brought you in from outside. The exposure had to have happened during transport or before." "No," Holt cut her off. "I was fine when I left my hotel this morning. I was fine in the vehicle. I started feeling symptoms in the ambulance, but the toxin was administered after I arrived at the hospital. Someone accessed my IV line in the first 4 minutes." Clara stared at him. "In the ER? That's impossible. There were 20 people in that room." 20 people focused on a cardiac emergency that wasn't cardiac. Holt's eyes hardened. The perfect distraction. Clara's mind raced. Someone in the hospital, someone with access to the ER, someone who knew VX7 and knew how to administer it through a standard IV line without anyone noticing. That wasn't a random attacker. That was someone trained. "There's more," Holt said. He pressed a button on his stretcher rail, and the cabin's internal comm crackled. "Tierney, tell her." The commander's voice came through immediately. "We have a second victim, Lieutenant Kyle Brewer, communications officer assigned to escort the general. He collapsed in the ICU approximately 12 minutes ago. Same symptoms, same toxin profile." Clara's blood ran cold. "He's here? In this hospital?" "Room 14, Tierney said, "and he's deteriorating fast." Clara grabbed the cabin door handle. "I need to get down there." "Wait," Holt tightened his grip on her wrist. "Clara, whoever did this, they didn't just target me. Brewer was carrying backup copies of my testimony files, encrypted drives. If they poisoned him too, they're not just trying to kill witnesses, they're erasing evidence." "A purge," Clara said. "A cleanup," Holt corrected. "The same kind of cleanup that destroyed Viper Squad." She pulled her wrist free. "Then I need to move. Now." 9:44 a.m. Clara hit the ICU floor running. Tierney and 2 armed guards flanked her, boots pounding the linoleum. Nurses at the station desk looked up with wide eyes as the group swept past. "Room 14, Clara said. "Who's been in and out in the last 20 minutes? A young nurse fumbled through her logbook. "Dr. Cross checked in once. 2 nurses on rotation. And, oh, there was someone from night shift who came in to adjust his IV." Clara stopped dead. "Night shift?" "Rachel. Rachel from the night rotation. She said she was covering a gap." Clara turned slowly. "What time does night shift end?" 7 a.m. "And what time is it now?" The nurse's face went pale. 9:44. "Rachel is not supposed to be here," Clara said. "Who authorized her to touch that IV?" Silence. Nobody answered. Nobody could. Clara pushed into room 14. Lieutenant Kyle Brewer lay on the bed, unconscious. skin carrying the same purplish discoloration she had seen on the general. His lips were turning blue. The monitors showed a heart rhythm that was too slow, too irregular, fighting against something that medication couldn't fix because no one had given him the right medication. She checked his IV line first. The bag hung from the pole, clear fluid dripping at a normal rate. It looked clean. It looked standard. It looked exactly the way it was supposed to look. That was the problem. Clara pulled the line from his arm and held the drip chamber up to the light. A faint, oily sheen clung to the inside of the tubing, almost invisible unless you knew exactly what to look for. "The toxin is in the line," she said, "not the bag." Someone coated the interior of the tubing before it was connected. Tierney stepped forward. "Can you treat him?" "Same antidote I used on the general, but I need it now, and this hospital supply is limited." She turned to the nurse in the doorway. "Get me the emergency toxicology tray from the ER. Run." The nurse ran. Clara turned back to Brewer, pressing 2 fingers against his carotid artery. His pulse was thready, weakening. She had minutes, not hours. "Stay with me, Lieutenant," she muttered. "I didn't come back from the dead to lose you." 9:51 a.m. The antidote arrived. Clara drew the dose, double-checked the concentration, and injected it into a fresh IV line she set up herself. She watched the monitor, counted the seconds. Her lips moved silently, the same countdown she had done 1,000 times in a place where hospitals didn't exist, and the only medical equipment came in a backpack. Brewer's heart rate spiked, dropped, spiked again, then steadied, slowly, reluctantly, like a man deciding whether he wanted to come back. His color shifted, the purple faded by a single shade. His breathing deepened. "He's stabilizing," Clara said, "but he needs monitoring every 15 minutes. No one touches his IV except me. No one." Tierney nodded. "Understood." He posted a guard inside the room and another outside the door. Clara stepped into the hallway, and that was when she saw it. A single drop of liquid on the floor, just outside the room. Clear, almost invisible against the white tile. But it caught the overhead light with an oily sheen that made her stomach turn. She crouched down. VX7 residue. Whoever had poisoned Brewer had dripped a trace amount walking away from the room. "Commander," she said quietly, "we have a trail." 10:02 a.m. They followed the droplets down the corridor. Clara moved in front, eyes scanning the floor with the kind of focus that blocked out everything else. The alarms, the nurses, the growing tension in Tierney's voice as he relayed updates through his earpiece. The trail led past the nurses' station, through a set of double doors, and into a service hallway that most patients never saw. The fluorescent lights here buzzed louder. The floor was older, scuffed. The drops ended at a utility closet. Clara reached for the handle and stopped. There, just above the latch, a faint smear of residue caught the light. Chemical, gritty. Her hand trembled. "This is the same compound," she said. "Exact same signature. I treated this in the field 6 years ago. There are maybe 3 people on Earth who know how to weaponize VX7 in a medical setting like this." "3 people?" Tierney asked. "3 who were trained, and all 3 were supposed to be dead." Tierney's jaw tightened. "You're saying this is connected to your unit? To Viper Squad?" "I'm saying whoever is doing this didn't learn it from a textbook." An alarm shrieked through the corridor. Red lights flashed along the ceiling. The overhead speaker crackled, and a panicked voice filled the air. "Code Red! Unauthorized breach in pharmacology. Repeat, Code Red. All security to the East Wing Pharmacy." Clara and Tierney locked eyes for 1 second. Then they ran. 10:09 a.m. The pharmacology wing was chaos. Staff pressed against walls. A security guard shouted into his radio. The door to the controlled substances room was wide open, lights flickering inside. Clara reached the doorway first. Inside, a supply cart was overturned. Vials were smashed across the floor. Whoever had been in here had moved fast, and known exactly where everything was stored. "Security footage," Clara said. "Now." Tierney pointed to the monitor above the door. The feed was still running, a grainy black and white image showing the room from a ceiling angle. "Rewind it," Clara said. A tech fumbled with the controls. The footage scrolled backward. Then Clara said, "Stop." A figure appeared on screen. Surgical scrubs, mask, gloves, moving through the pharmacy with absolute precision. No hesitation, no searching. They walked to a specific shelf, pulled specific vials, and loaded them into a case with the efficiency of someone who had rehearsed this 100 times. But it wasn't the efficiency that froze Clara's blood. It was the way they moved. The slight tilt of the head before entering the frame. The way their left foot pivoted exactly 30 degrees before stepping forward. The relaxed drop of the shoulders, even under pressure. Clara gripped the edge of the desk so hard her knuckles turned white. "Play it again," she whispered. The footage replayed. The figure turned slightly. The angle of their jaw became visible beneath the surgical mask. The way they held the tray, left hand underneath, right hand on top, thumb extended along the edge. Clara's knees buckled. She caught herself against the wall. "No," she breathed. "No, that's not possible." Tierney grabbed her shoulder. "Briggs, talk to me. Do you recognize them?" She couldn't speak. The air had left her lungs, and the room was spinning, and the figure on that screen was walking with a gait she had memorized over 4 years of training, 4 years of combat, 4 years of trusting someone with her life. "They're dead," she said. Her voice cracked like old wood splitting. "They died. I saw the helmet. I saw the dog tags. They pulled them from the rubble and showed me and told me." "Who, Clara?" Tierney's voice was sharp. "Who is on that screen?" She stared at the frozen image. The jawline beneath the mask, the shoulders, the pivot of the foot. Everything she had mourned. Everything she had buried. Everything she had told herself was gone forever. "Dominic Farrell," she said. "Sergeant First Class, Viper Squad, my second in command." 10:17 a.m. Tierney pulled her away from the monitor. "Your second in command? The one you said died in the outpost explosion?" "He was standing 10 feet from the blast point," Clara said, her voice hollow. "They recovered his helmet and his tags. The military declared him killed in action. I attended a closed memorial. There was a flag. There was a letter. I wrote half of it myself." "Then how is he on that footage?" Clara pressed her palms against her eyes. Pieces she had never allowed herself to examine were falling into place. Hard, sharp, relentless. Dom had been the one who filed the report about VX7 through secure channels. Dom was the one who insisted on going through proper protocol. And Dom was the one standing closest to the communications console when the outpost exploded. The console that someone would have needed to access to send a signal confirming the team's location. "He didn't die," Clara whispered. "He was extracted before the blast. He was the one who gave them our position." The words felt like swallowing glass. "He betrayed us," she said. "He betrayed all of us, and now he's here to finish it." Tierney reached for his earpiece. "All units, lockdown, full hospital. No one enters or exits without—" The overhead speaker cut him off. A different alarm this time, faster, more urgent. "All units report to pediatrics. Suspected intruder heading toward East Wing. Repeat, suspected intruder, East Wing." Clara's head snapped up. Pediatrics? Why would he go to pediatrics? But even as she asked, she knew. Dom wasn't heading for children. He was moving through the hospital floor by floor, wing by wing, heading for the ventilation control access point in the building's lower level. And the fastest route from pharmacology to the basement ran directly through the East Wing. He was coming, and every second they stood here was a second closer to a body count that would make Viper Squad's 6 casualties look like nothing. Clara pushed past Tierney and broke into a sprint. Her feet hit the floor hard and fast, the rhythm automatic, instinctive. The same rhythm she had run with in the desert, in the dark, in the smoke, in every nightmare she had ever tried to outrun. But this time, she wasn't running away. She was running toward the ghost of the man she had trusted most in the world, the man who had taught her how to survive, the man who had killed her entire team and let her believe he was the only one left. And somewhere in this hospital, Dominic Farrell was waiting for her. Clara rounded the corner into the East Wing at full speed, her sneakers gripping the linoleum as she cut past a supply cart and nearly collided with a janitor who pressed himself flat against the wall. Tierney was 3 steps behind her, his 2 guards flanking wide. His earpiece crackled non-stop with security updates, fragmented reports, confused sightings, conflicting directions. The hospital had never dealt with anything like this, and it showed. Pediatrics nurse station reports the intruder passed through less than 90 seconds ago, Tierney relayed, breathing hard, heading south through the connecting corridor. He's not heading south, Clara said without slowing down. He's cutting through. The south corridor connects to the service elevator bank. That drops straight to the basement. How do you know that? Because it's what I would do. 10:22 a.m. They hit the pediatrics floor and Clara's heart seized. Nurses were huddled behind the station desk, 2 of them crying. A young resident stood frozen in the middle of the hallway, holding a stethoscope like he had forgotten what it was for. Clara grabbed his arm. "Did you see him? The man in scrubs with a mask." The resident's mouth opened. Nothing came out. He pointed down the hall with a shaking hand. He went through there, through the isolation wing. He had something in his hand, a case, metal. Clara released him and kept moving. Tierney caught up beside her. "If he's carrying a metal case, that's the vials from pharmacology," Clara said. "He's building a payload, enough concentrated VX7 to flood an entire ventilation system. How much damage are we talking about?" Clara didn't answer right away. She pushed through the double doors into the isolation wing, checking each room as she passed. Empty. Empty. Door closed. Door closed. "Briggs," Tierney pressed, "how much damage?" "If he reaches ventilation control and disperses the toxin through the central air system, every person in this building, patients, staff, visitors, children, will be exposed within 90 seconds. Symptomatic within 3 minutes. Dead within 10. Tierney's face went white. "That's over 800 people." "I know." 10:26 a.m. The 3rd isolation room door was cracked open, just a sliver. Clara held up her fist, the universal military signal, to stop. Tierney and his guards halted instantly. She listened. The hum of an air purifier, the soft beep of a disconnected monitor, and beneath that, something else. Breathing. Controlled. Deliberate. The kind of breathing you learn when you're taught to sit in absolute darkness and wait for your target to come to you. Clara turned to Tierney and spoke barely above a whisper. "He's in there." "We breach on 3, Tierney said, signaling his guards forward. "No." Clara put her hand on his chest, stopping him. "You breach that door with uniforms and weapons, he'll trigger whatever he's carrying. Dom was trained to work under pressure. A tactical entry is exactly what he expects." "Then what do you suggest?" "I go in alone." "Absolutely not." "Commander." Clara looked him dead in the eyes. "Dominic Farrell spent 4 years as my second in command. He trained me. I trained with him. He knows how I think, and I know how he thinks. If he sees soldiers, his mission kicks in, and people die. If he sees me," she swallowed hard, "he'll hesitate, even for a second. And a second is all I need." Tierney stared at her for a long moment. Then he pulled his sidearm and held it out to her. Clara shook her head. "He'll know if I'm armed. He always could tell." Tierney's jaw clenched. "You're going in unarmed against a man carrying enough poison to kill this entire hospital?" "I'm going in as the one person he didn't expect to see alive." She didn't wait for permission. She pushed the door open and stepped inside. 10:29 a.m. The room was dark, blinds drawn. The air purifier hummed low and steady. A small crib sat in the far corner, empty, mattress stripped. The only light came from a thin crack beneath the blinds, a pale yellow line that cut across the floor like a scar. Clara's pulse hammered. She could feel him in the room the way you feel a storm before it breaks. Pressure, weight, the electricity of something about to happen. "Dom," she said quietly, "I know you're here." Nothing. No sound. No movement. "I saw the footage. I know it's you. I know your walk. I know your pivot. I know the way you hold a tray." A breath, slow, controlled, coming from behind the privacy curtain to her left. "You taught me to notice those things," she said. "Remember? Camp Peary, 3rd week of advanced field medicine. You told me that the body never lies, even when the mouth does." The curtain shifted. A hand appeared, pulling the fabric aside with the same deliberate motion she had watched 1,000 times in 1,000 briefings. And there he was, Dominic Farrell, surgical mask over his face, gloves on his hands, scrubs hanging loose on a frame that had grown leaner, harder, sharper since the last time she had seen him. But the eyes, gray, piercing, reading everything in the room in a single sweep, those were the same. He looked at her the way you look at something you buried and never expected to dig up. "Clara," he said softly, the word muffled behind the mask but unmistakable. "You were always too stubborn to die." Her throat tightened. "And you were supposed to be dead." "I was dead. For a long time, I was dead." He stepped forward, and she saw the metal case in his left hand, clasped shut, held against his hip. "Then I realized the dead don't have to follow orders anymore." "Whose orders, Dom?" He tilted his head. That tilt. The one she had seen on the security footage. The one she had seen every morning for 4 years in the field when he was assessing a situation, calculating angles, deciding who lived and who didn't. "You already know whose orders," he said. "The same people who signed off on VX7. The same people who sent us to that outpost and then burned it to the ground when we found what we weren't supposed to find. And you helped them." The words came out harder than she intended. She watched them land, watched his shoulders tighten, his chin lift, his grip shift on the case. "I survived them," he corrected. "You sold us out. You gave them our position. You let them kill Reeves, Gutierrez, Park, Mitchell, Tran." She said each name like dropping a stone into deep water. "You let them kill our family." 10:33 a.m. Dom didn't flinch at the names, but something moved behind his eyes. A fracture, thin as a hairline crack in glass, spreading before it sealed itself shut again. "They were going to die anyway," he said. "The order was already signed. The outpost was already targeted. I had a choice: die with them or walk away with something to bargain with." "What did you bargain for?" "A new identity, relocation, and a promise that the program would be shut down." Clara almost laughed. It came out as something broken, half a sound, sharp and bitter. A promise, from the same people who manufacture neurotoxins in secret labs and murder their own soldiers. "I was 29 years old, Clara. I was scared. I didn't want to die in the sand for a report that nobody was going to read." "I read it," she said. "I wrote half of it with you. I believed in it. I believed in you." The crack in his eyes widened. For 1 second she saw the man she remembered, the one who had carried a wounded Afghan girl 2 miles through hostile territory because he said no one was too small to save. The one who had sat with her the night before their final mission and said, "If anything happens tomorrow, just know this team is the only real thing I've ever been part of." Then the crack sealed. His hand tightened on the case. "That was another life," he said, "and I'm not here to relive it." "Then why are you here?" Dom stepped closer, close enough that she could see the small scar above his left eyebrow, the one he got in Fallujah when a wall collapsed during a firefight. She had stitched that wound herself, in the dark, with a flashlight held between her teeth. "The general is going to testify," Dom said. "He has the original VX7 files, the real ones. If those files reach the Senate committee, every person involved in the program goes down, including the people who kept me alive. So they sent you to clean it up. They sent me because I'm the only one who can get close enough. I know the toxin, I know the antidote, I know the dosing, and I know you." Clara's blood chilled. "You knew I was here. I knew you were at Ridgemont. I've known for 2 years. They tracked you after the explosion. New name, new file, new life. But they kept tabs, just in case." "Just in case of what?" "In case you remembered." 10:38 a.m. Clara's mind raced. 2 years. They had known where she was for 2 years. Every shift she worked, every patient she treated, every night she went home and told herself she was safe. They had been watching. "The general wasn't your only target today," she said. "Was he?" Dom didn't answer. He didn't have to. The look in his eyes said everything. "I was the second target," Clara whispered. "You were always the second target. The general first, because he has the files. You second, because you're the only person alive who can authenticate them. You treated VX 7 victims in the field. You documented the symptoms. Your medical notes are the only independent verification that the program existed." Clara felt the floor tilt beneath her. Everything, the firing, the humiliation, the walk toward the exit, it all could have ended differently. If she had stepped through those revolving doors and walked to her car, she would have been alone in a parking lot, exposed, easy. "You were going to kill me in the parking lot," she said. "I was going to make it painless," Dom said quietly. "I owed you that much." The words hit her chest like a bullet, not because they were cruel, but because they were sincere. He meant it. In his broken, twisted calculation, a painless death was the last act of loyalty he could offer. "But I didn't leave," Clara said. "I saved the general instead. And now you can't finish the job without going through the whole hospital." Dom's grip shifted on the case. "You were always the variable I couldn't control." "Then stop trying to control it." Clara took a step forward. "Put the case down, Dom. This is over." He shook his head slowly. "It's not over until every trace of VX7 is gone. Every file, every witness, every person who touched that program." He lifted the case slightly. "This is enough to make sure no one in this building talks about what they saw today." "There are children on this floor," Clara said. 3 floors down, there's a NICU with 14 premature babies on ventilators. You're going to kill them too?" Something flickered in his face. Fast. Gone almost instantly. But she caught it. "Dom," she pressed, "you carried a 7-year-old girl through a combat zone because you said she mattered. You told me every life counts. You made me believe that. Was all of it a lie?" "Stop it," he said sharply. "Was it a lie?" I said stop. "Tell me it was a lie, Dom. Tell me to my face that the man I served with for 4 years was a performance. Tell me none of it was real. Because if you can say that and mean it, then go ahead. Open the case. Finish your mission." 10:43 a.m. Dom stood frozen. His chest rose and fell, faster now, the controlled breathing cracking at the edges. His hand on the case trembled, just barely, just enough for Clara to see. She took another step, close enough to touch him. "You don't have to do this," she said softly. "Whatever they promised you, whatever they threatened you with, it doesn't have to end this way." His voice dropped to a ragged whisper. "You don't understand. If I don't finish this, they'll send someone else. Someone who won't hesitate. Someone who won't give you a painless option." "Then let them come," Clara said, "and I'll stop them too." "You can't stop all of them." "I stopped you." The words hung in the air between them. Dom's eyes glistened. His jaw worked beneath the mask, muscles clenching and releasing, fighting something internal that Clara could see but couldn't name. Then something shifted. Not surrender. Something harder. Decision. Dom moved. He yanked the case open, and Clara saw the vials. 8 of them, neatly arranged in foam cutouts, each one containing enough concentrated VX7 to kill 100 people. His hand closed around one. Clara lunged. She caught his wrist with both hands, driving her weight forward, slamming his arm against the wall. The vial popped free and spun through the air. Clara's left hand released his wrist and snatched the vial an inch before it hit the floor. Dom drove his elbow into her ribs. Pain exploded through her side. She doubled over, but didn't let go of the vial. He grabbed her hair and yanked her head back, pulling her off balance. She twisted, using the momentum to sweep his legs. He stumbled. The case hit the ground. Vials rattled in their foam slots. "Don't make me do this, Clara," Dom growled, regaining his footing. "You already did this," she gasped, clutching her ribs. 6 years ago. 10:47 a.m. He came at her again, faster this time, combat speed. The kind of movement that turns a corridor into a kill zone. He swung low, aiming for her knees. She jumped back, felt the rush of air as his fist cut past her shin, and countered with a palm strike to his jaw that she felt all the way up her arm. Dom's head snapped sideways. He staggered. Then he smiled behind the mask, a cold, broken thing that made her stomach turn. "Still remember Camp Peary," he said. "You taught me well." Not well enough. He feinted left and drove his right knee into her hip. Clara crashed against the wall. Before she could recover, his hand closed around her throat. Not squeezing, holding, the way he used to demonstrate control techniques during training. Firm enough to restrict, not enough to crush. "I don't want to kill you," he said, his face inches from hers. "I never wanted to kill you." "Then don't." His fingers tightened. "I don't have that option anymore." Clara's vision spotted. She had seconds. Her hand found the vial she had caught, still clutched in her left fist. She brought it up between them, holding it in front of his face. "You squeeze," she whispered, "and I drop this. It shatters. We both die, right here, together, the way it should have been in Syria." Dom's eyes widened. His grip faltered. "Is that what you want?" Clara rasped. "To die in a children's ward? Is that how Sergeant First Class Dominic Farrell goes out?" His hand released. He stumbled backward, chest heaving, eyes wild with something that looked like terror and grief tangled together so tightly neither one could break free. Clara coughed, gulping air, pressing her back against the wall to stay upright. 10:51 a.m. "Tierney!" she shouted, her voice raw. "Now!" The door exploded inward. Tierney and his 2 guards rushed in, weapons drawn. Dom spun toward them. His hand darted into his scrub pocket and came out with a flash canister. Small, military grade, the kind Viper Squad used to carry on night operations. "Down!" Clara screamed. The canister detonated. White light consumed the room. The guards reeled, hands flying to their eyes. Tierney cursed and dropped to one knee. The air purifier screeched as the concussive burst rattled its housing. Clara pressed her eyes shut a half second before the blast. Trained reflex. Dom had taught her that too. Always watch the hand, not the canister. If you see the release, you close your eyes before the light hits. She opened them to see Dom grabbing the case and sprinting through the adjoining door into the service corridor. "He's running!" Clara shouted. "Basement access, south service elevator." She didn't wait for Tierney to recover. She was through the door and into the corridor before the spots had cleared from his vision. The service hallway stretched ahead of her, long and straight, and Dom was already 30 yards ahead, running hard, the metal case banging against his hip. "Dom, stop!" He didn't stop. He hit the elevator bank and slammed the call button. The doors opened immediately. Someone on the maintenance crew had left it on this floor. Clara pushed harder. 20 yards. 15. 10. Dom stepped into the elevator and turned to face her. For 1 second, their eyes met down the length of the hallway. His finger hovered over the basement button. "Don't follow me," he said. "Please." The doors closed. Clara slammed into them with both palms, but they were already sealed. She could hear the elevator descending, the mechanical hum dropping lower and lower. She pressed her forehead against the cold metal and forced herself to breathe. Then she turned, found the stairwell door, and threw it open. 10:54 a.m. 9 flights of stairs to the basement. Clara took them faster than she had taken any stairs in her life, her feet barely touching each step, one hand on the railing, the other still clutching the single vial of VX7 she had pulled from Dom's hand. She could hear Tierney's voice in the earpiece the commander had given her, shouting orders, calling for backup, trying to coordinate a lockdown of the lower levels. But the hospital wasn't built for military containment. It was built for healing, and right now, it was about to become a weapon. If Dom reached the ventilation control room and released even 3 of those 8 vials into the central air system, the toxin would spread through every floor, every wing, every room within 90 seconds. Over 800 people, patients on ventilators who couldn't run, newborns in the NICU who couldn't even cry for help, children recovering from surgeries they were told would save their lives. Clara hit the basement level and kicked through the stairwell door. The corridor stretched ahead, cold, humming with the deep vibration of the hospital's mechanical heart. Pipes ran along the ceiling. The air tasted metallic. And at the far end, standing in front of a steel door marked "Restricted Access, Ventilation Control," Dominic Farrell was punching in a code. He had the case open at his feet, 3 vials already removed, lined up on the edge of a maintenance shelf beside the keypad. Clara walked toward him, not running, walking, each step measured, deliberate, the way she approached patients who were about to die. With calm she didn't feel, with steadiness she had to manufacture from nothing. "How do you have that access code?" she asked. Dom didn't turn around. "I've been inside this hospital for 3 weeks. Maintenance uniform, night shifts. I mapped every system in this building." 3 weeks, Clara repeated. "You've been here for 3 weeks, and you never once came to find me." His fingers paused on the keypad, 1 digit away from entry. "I found you on the first day," he said quietly. "I watched you in the ER, treating patients, laughing with nurses during shift change, eating lunch alone in the break room, reading a paperback." His voice thinned. "You looked normal. You looked like you'd made it out, like you'd actually built something." "I had," Clara said, "until today." He turned. His eyes were wet above the mask. "I almost walked away," he said, 3 times. "I almost scrapped the mission and disappeared. But they have people, Clara, people I care about, people who will die if I don't finish this." "Who?" He shook his head. "It doesn't matter. It matters to me." His finger rested on the final digit. 1 press and the door would open. 1 more minute and the ventilation system would become a delivery mechanism for mass murder. Clara stood 10 feet away. She held up the single vial in her hand, the one she had taken from him in the isolation room. "You're missing 1, she said. 7 vials won't give you full coverage. You need all 8 for complete saturation. The concentration will drop below lethal threshold on the upper floors. The NICU, pediatrics, they'll survive." Dom stared at the vial in her hand. "You paid attention during toxicology briefings." "I paid attention to everything you taught me." His jaw worked beneath the mask. His finger hovered. The keypad beeped softly, waiting. "Give me the vial, Clara." "No." "Give me the vial and walk away. Take the stairs. Get out of the building. You'll have 8 minutes before the system circulates." "I'm not leaving." "Then you'll die here." "Then I'll die here." She took another step forward. "But I won't die running. And I won't die pretending that the man standing in front of me is a stranger. I know you, Dom. I know the man who carried that little girl in Kandahar. I know the man who held my hand when I lost my first patient in the field and told me that grief is what separates medics from machines. Stop. I know the man who sat with me the night before the last mission and said this team is the only real thing I've ever been part of. I said stop. His voice broke. The sound echoed through the basement corridor, raw, ragged, ripped from somewhere deep inside his chest that he had spent 6 years trying to seal shut. His hand dropped from the keypad. He stood there, trembling, the mask fogging with each rapid breath. 10:59 a.m. Clara closed the distance between them. 5 feet, 3, 2. She reached up and pulled the mask down from his face. And there he was, older, thinner, a new scar along his right cheekbone, lines around his mouth that hadn't been there before. But the same face, the same man, the man she had mourned every single day for 6 years. You don't have to be what they made you, she said. A tear broke from his left eye and ran down his cheek, cutting through the dust and sweat. I don't know how to be anything else, he whispered. Not anymore. Yes, you do. Clara reached down and picked up the 3 vials from the maintenance shelf. She held all 4, 3 in one hand, 1 in the other, and looked him in the eyes. Because the man who taught me to save lives doesn't get to end them. Not like this. Not today. Dom stared at her. His whole body shook. His hands hung at his sides, empty, useless, the hands of a soldier who had finally run out of war. Then his knees gave out. He dropped to the floor, and Clara caught him. She held him there, in the cold basement of a hospital that didn't know how close it had come to becoming a tomb. She held the man who had killed her team, who had lied to the world, who had come here to murder 800 people, and the woman he once called family. She held him, and he broke apart in her arms. And above them, 800 souls kept breathing, kept living, kept existing in a world they would never know had almost ended, because a fired nurse walked toward the ghost instead of running away. Tierney and his guards reached the basement corridor 45 seconds later. They came hard and fast, weapons drawn, boots hammering the concrete floor. But what they found wasn't what any of them expected. Clara Briggs was kneeling on the floor, holding Dominic Farrell against her chest. The metal case sat open beside them, 4 vials of VX7 still in her hand, the rest secured in their foam cutouts. The keypad to the ventilation control room blinked green, 1 digit away from entry, but the door remained sealed. Nobody moved for a long moment. 11:02 a.m. Tierney holstered his sidearm and crouched beside them. Is it over? Clara looked up at him. Her face was streaked with sweat and tears she didn't remember shedding. Secure the vials, all of them. They need to go into a hazmat containment unit immediately. Do not let anyone handle them without level A protection. Tierney signaled his guards. One of them produced a sealed military transport container from a pack on his back. Clara placed the 4 vials inside one by one, her hands steady even though the rest of her body was shaking. The guards secured the remaining 4 from the case. 8 total? Tierney confirmed. 8 total. That's the full payload. Check the pharmacology inventory for anything else that's been tampered with. He had access to the hospital for 3 weeks. Tierney's eyes widened. 3 weeks? Night maintenance. He mapped the entire building. Clara looked down at Dom. His eyes were closed. His breathing was shallow and uneven, like a man who had stopped fighting everything at once. The mission, the memories, and whatever was left of himself. He needs to be restrained and placed under guard, but he also needs medical attention. Check his vitals. I don't know what he's been exposed to or what they've been giving him to keep him operational. Tierney nodded and gestured to the guards. They moved in carefully, pulling Dom from Clara's arms. He didn't resist. His body was limp, compliant, emptied of the force that had driven him through this hospital like a weapon. But as the guards lifted him to his feet, Dom's eyes opened. He looked at Clara one last time. They'll come for you, he said. His voice was barely audible. The people who sent me. When they find out I failed, they'll send someone else. I know, Clara said. Next time there won't be a conversation. I know that too. The guards pulled him toward the stairwell. Dom stumbled, caught himself, and kept walking. He didn't look back again. Clara stayed on her knees for a long moment after they were gone. The basement hummed around her. The pipes above her head carried heated air to 800 people who were still alive because of choices made in the last 47 minutes. Then she stood up, wiped her face with the back of her hand, and turned to Tierney. Take me to the general. 11:09 a.m. The elevator ride up was silent. Clara pressed her back against the wall and closed her eyes. Her ribs throbbed where Dom had driven his elbow into her side. Her throat ached where his hand had closed around it. Her left shoulder burned from the impact against the wall in the isolation room. But the physical pain was nothing compared to what was happening inside her head. Dom was alive. For 6 years, she had carried his death like a stone in her chest. She had attended his memorial. She had written words about his courage, his sacrifice, his dedication to the team. She had cried alone in her apartment for weeks afterward, not just for him, but for all of them. Reeves, Gutierrez, Park, Mitchell, Tran. 5 names. 5 people she had loved in the way that only soldiers love each other. The kind of love forged in fear and fire, and the absolute certainty that the person beside you would die before they let you die alone. And one of those 5 had been the one who killed the rest. Clara pressed her fist against her mouth and swallowed the sound that tried to escape. Briggs. Tierney's voice was quiet. You did something extraordinary down there. She didn't open her eyes. I held a man while he cried. There's nothing extraordinary about that. You saved 800 lives. I saved the life of the man who murdered my team. That's what I did. The elevator doors opened. Clara stepped out into the ICU corridor and felt the shift immediately. The air was different up here now, charged. Every nurse, every tech, every doctor she passed looked at her with an expression she hadn't seen directed at her in 12 years of working in this hospital. Not suspicion, not dismissal, something closer to awe, mixed with the uncomfortable realization that they had all been wrong about her. She ignored every one of them. Room 14 first. She pushed through the door and checked Lieutenant Brewer's vitals. His color had improved significantly. The purplish discoloration had faded to a faint shadow along his neck. Heart rate, stable. Oxygen levels, climbing. The antidote was working. He woke up briefly about 10 minutes ago, the nurse on watch said. Asked where he was, asked about the general. Did he say anything else? He said Viper. The nurse frowned. Does that mean something? Clara's chest tightened. It means he knows more than they thought he did. She made a note on his chart, her hand moving on instinct, even though she no longer officially worked here, and walked out. 11:16 a.m. General Marcus Holt had been moved from the helicopter to a secured room on the 4th floor. 2 Navy guards stood outside. A military physician was reviewing his chart when Clara arrived, but Holt waved the doctor away the moment he saw her in the doorway. Leave us, Holt said. The physician looked at Tierney, who nodded. The room cleared. The door closed. Holt was sitting up now, oxygen mask replaced by a nasal cannula. His color was better, not good, but alive. The gray had retreated, leaving behind the weathered tan of a man who had spent most of his career in places where shade was a luxury. Sit down, Briggs, he said. This time, she sat. Her legs wouldn't have held her much longer anyway. Tierney briefed me, Holt said. The basement, the ventilation system, the vials. He paused. And the identity of the poisoner. Clara stared at her hands in her lap. The knuckles were scraped raw from the fight. Dominic Farrell. Holt said the name carefully, like handling something fragile. I remember him from the oversight files, your second in command. Exemplary service record. 3 commendations. He was the best soldier I ever served with, Clara said quietly. And he was the one who killed the rest of them. Holt let that settle before he spoke again. He told you something in that basement. Tierney's report says Farrell indicated he was sent by the people behind the VX7 program. He didn't just indicate it, he confirmed it. The outpost explosion wasn't an operational failure. It was an assassination. Viper Squad found the VX7 stockpile during our last mission. We documented it, we reported it, and 48 hours later, they killed us for it. Not all of you, Holt said. 2 survivors, one who was bought. Clara's voice hardened. And one who was supposed to be a loose end, but crawled out of the rubble instead. 11:22 a.m. Holt reached for a glass of water on the bedside table. His hands shook. Clara leaned forward and held the glass for him. He drank slowly, then set it aside. I need to tell you something, he said. Something I should have told you 6 years ago. Clara felt her stomach tighten. I was on the oversight committee when the VX7 program was first proposed. I didn't approve it, I fought it, but I was overruled, and the program went forward under a classified compartment that I was eventually shut out of. You knew the program existed before we found it. I knew it existed. I didn't know where it was being developed or how far it had gone. When your team's report came through secure channels, I recognized immediately what you had found, and I tried to protect you. Clara's hands balled into fists. You failed. I failed, Holt agreed. No excuses, no softening. By the time I got the authorization to extract your team, the order to destroy the outpost had already been executed. I arrived at the site 14 hours after the explosion. I saw the wreckage. I pulled your service file and saw that you had been relocated to civilian life under a new classification. And you didn't come find me. I couldn't, not then. The people behind the program had enough influence to block any investigation. If I had contacted you, it would have exposed your location and put you right back in the crosshairs. So you waited. I gathered evidence. For 6 years, I collected every document, every communication, every financial record connected to the VX7 program. I built a case, and last month I finally got a closed session hearing with the Senate Intelligence Committee. He coughed, wincing. I was supposed to testify this morning. Clara closed her eyes. And they tried to kill you before you could. The toxin was administered right here in this hospital, in the ER, during the chaos of my arrival. Farrell infiltrated the medical staff, accessed my IV line in the first 4 minutes, and dosed me with the same compound that killed your team. He told me he'd been inside the hospital for 3 weeks. Holt nodded slowly. Which means this wasn't a last-minute operation. They knew I was coming. They knew which hospital the ambulance would bring me to, and they placed their operative well in advance. There's something else, Clara said. She leaned forward, and the words she spoke next cost her more than anything she had said all day. Dom told me he has people he cares about, people who will die if he doesn't complete the mission. He wasn't just doing this for survival. They're holding someone over him. 11:29 a.m. Holt's expression shifted. Leverage. He said they offered him a way out after the explosion. New identity, relocation. But I don't think it was that simple. I think they own him. Completely. And whatever hold they have, it's strong enough to turn a man who once carried a wounded child through 2 miles of enemy fire into someone who was willing to poison an entire hospital. Holt studied her for a long moment. You're defending him. I'm not defending him. I'm telling you there are more pieces to this than one broken soldier and a handful of vials. Whoever is running this, whoever sent Dom here, they're still out there. And if Dom failed, they already know it, which means we're on a clock. As if the universe had heard her, Tierney burst through the door. General, we have a problem. Both Clara and Holt turned. I just received word from Naval Intelligence. 40 minutes ago, a team of contractors, private military, unaffiliated, was dispatched from a staging area in Northern Virginia. Estimated arrival at this hospital is under 2 hours. Clara's blood went cold. They're sending a cleanup crew. That's our assessment, Tierney said. 6 to 8 operators, armed. Their objective will be to eliminate all witnesses and recover or destroy the VX-7 samples. Holt's face hardened. How did naval intelligence pick this up? Farrell, he's talking. Tierney looked at Clara. He's asking for you specifically. He says he'll only give full operational details to you. 11:34 a.m. Clara stood up so fast the chair scraped against the floor. Where is he? Secured room on the second floor. 2 guards inside, 2 outside. He's restrained. She was already moving toward the door when Holt called out behind her. Briggs! She stopped. Whatever he tells you, get the names of the people who authorized the VX-7 program. The names of the people who ordered the hit on Viper Squad. Without those names, my testimony is just one man's word against a classified wall. Clara nodded. I'll get them. She walked out of the room and headed for the elevator. Tierney fell into step beside her. He's been cooperative since they brought him up from the basement, Tierney said. Hasn't spoken much, but he hasn't resisted either. When I told him about the incoming team, something changed. He got agitated. Said he needed to talk to you immediately. Did he say why? He said, and I'm quoting, because she's the only one they can't lie to. The elevator opened. Clara stepped in. Tierney reached for the button, but Clara pressed it herself. Second floor. Commander, she said as the doors closed, the cleanup team, what's our realistic defense capability? I have 4 Navy personnel on site. The hospital has private security, but they're not equipped for a military-grade assault. Local police have been notified, but their response time to a classified military threat isn't encouraging. So we're on our own. For approximately 90 minutes, yes. Clara leaned against the elevator wall and let out a breath that carried the weight of everything that had happened since 9:03 that morning. 2 hours ago, she was a trauma nurse finishing a routine stitch. Now she was standing at the center of a conspiracy that had already killed 5 of the people she loved most, and she had 90 minutes before a private army arrived to finish the job. We need to evacuate the hospital, she said. That's being coordinated now, but a full evacuation of a facility this size takes time. Critical patients in the ICU and NICU can't be moved quickly. Then we don't move them. We hold the building. Tierney looked at her. Hold it with what? With whatever we've got. 11:41 a.m. The door to the secured room on the second floor was flanked by 2 Navy guards who snapped to attention when Tierney approached. He nodded, and one of them unlocked the door. Clara stepped inside alone. Dom sat in a chair, hands zip-tied to the armrests. He had been cleaned up, mask removed, gloves gone, a fresh bandage wrapped around the wrist she had twisted in the fight. His face, fully exposed now, looked older than his 35 years. Hollow cheeks, dark circles. The scar on his cheekbone stood out white against skin that hadn't seen proper sunlight in months. But his eyes were sharp, alert, focused. Whatever had broken in the basement had been reassembled into something functional, if not whole. Clara, he said when she closed the door behind her, you wanted to talk. They're sending a team. I know, Tierney told me, 6 to 8 contractors from Northern Virginia. Dom shook his head. It's not 6 to 8. That's what the signal intercept showed. But the actual team is 12. 4 vehicle convoy, 2 SUVs, 1 tactical van, 1 communications vehicle. They'll approach from Route 7 and split into 2 entry teams. 1 through the emergency department, 1 through the loading dock on the north side. Clara pulled a chair across from him and sat down. How do you know the exact configuration? Because I helped plan it. His jaw tightened. The contingency was always part of the operation. If the primary operative, me, failed to complete the mission within 2 hours, the backup team would be deployed. Their objective is total containment. No survivors who saw the toxin. No survivors who can connect it to the program. Total containment, Clara repeated. That includes patients. That includes everyone. The cover story is already written. Gas leak, structural failure, whatever plays best on the news. Clara felt sick. You planned this. I planned it because they told me if I did my job right, it would never be needed. No one was supposed to fight back. The general was supposed to die of a cardiac event. You were supposed to walk out the front door and never come home. His voice cracked on the last three words. I was supposed to be a ghost, not a butcher. But here we are. Here we are. He pulled against his restraints, not to escape, but out of frustration. Clara, listen to me. The team leader is a man named Garrett Sinclair, ex-CIA Special Activities Division. He's been the program's fixer for 8 years. Every time VX7 threatened to surface, a journalist asking questions, a whistleblower filing a complaint, a foreign intelligence agency getting too close, Sinclair made it disappear. Made it disappear how? Car accidents, suicides, house fires, the kind of things that make the news for one day and then everyone forgets. Dom's voice dropped. He's the one who gave the order to destroy the outpost. Not a general, not a politician, Sinclair. He operates outside the chain of command with authorization from people who don't officially exist. 11:48 a.m. Clara leaned forward. The general needs names. The people who authorize the VX7 program, the people at the top. Can you give me those names? Dom was quiet for a moment. He stared at his bound hands. If I give you those names, everyone connected to me is dead. You understand that, right? Not me, the people I was protecting by doing this. Who are they, Dom? He closed his eyes. After the outpost, when they extracted me, they didn't just give me a new identity. They gave me a handler, a woman named Voss. She managed my assignments, my location, my communications. 3 years in, she and I, he trailed off. Clara understood. You have a family, a daughter, 18 months old. Voss and the baby are in a safe house in Maryland. If I complete the mission, they stay safe. If I fail or turn, Sinclair's people move on them within 6 hours. The air in the room changed. Clara felt it settle over her like ice water. Where in Maryland? She asked. I can't tell you that. Dom, we have less than 90 minutes before 12 armed operators hit this hospital. If I'm going to stop them and protect your daughter, I need to know where she is. His eyes opened, red-rimmed, raw. You'd do that? After everything I did? Your daughter didn't betray Viper Squad. Your daughter didn't poison anyone. She's 18 months old and she's a hostage. And I don't leave hostages behind. Clara held his gaze. You taught me that. Something fractured in Dom's expression. Not the way it had fractured in the basement. That was collapse, surrender, the end of something. This was different. This was the first crack of something trying to grow back. Annapolis, he whispered. A farmhouse on Whitehall Creek Road. Blue shutters. The woman with her, Voss. She's armed, but she won't fight. She's as trapped as I am. Clara turned to the door. Tierney! The commander entered immediately. I need you to relay coordinates to Naval Intelligence right now. Farmhouse on Whitehall Creek Road, Annapolis, Maryland. Blue shutters. There's a woman and an 18-month-old child being held as leverage. They need extraction before Sinclair's people can reach them. Tierney didn't hesitate. He pressed his earpiece and started talking. Clara turned back to Dom. Now the names. 11:55 a.m. Dom pulled against his restraints one more time. Not fighting, bracing, like a man about to jump from a high place and knowing there's no going back. The program was authorized by a joint committee that doesn't appear in any official record. 3 people, Deputy Director of Operations at the CIA, a man named Walter Fenn. He signed the original funding authorization. Second, a Pentagon liaison named Margaret Hale. She provided the military infrastructure, labs, personnel, transport logistics. And the third? Dom's face twisted with something Clara couldn't immediately identify. Disgust, maybe, or grief, or both. Senator Raymond Decker, chairman of the Senate Armed Services Subcommittee on Emerging Threats. He's the one who proposed VX-7 in the first place. Pitched it as a deterrent program, defensive research only. But Decker pushed it into offensive development within 6 months and classified it so deep that even the Intelligence Committee didn't know it existed. Clara's mind raced. Senator Decker sits on the Intelligence Committee. He chairs the Armed Services Subcommittee, different committee, overlapping jurisdiction. He's been blocking any inquiry into chemical weapons programs for years. And he's the one who got Sinclair his operating authority. The general was going to testify before the Intelligence Committee this morning, Clara said slowly. Decker would have known about that hearing. He would have had advance notice. He didn't just have advance notice. He's the one who leaked the general's schedule. Dom's voice went flat and hard. Decker told Sinclair exactly which hospital the ambulance would bring Holt to, exactly which route, exactly which time. Decker set this entire thing in motion. Clara stood up. Her heart pounded so hard she felt it in her damaged ribs. A sitting United States senator ordered the assassination of a decorated general to prevent testimony about an illegal weapons program that he created. Yes, and when the assassination failed, that same senator authorized a private military team to attack a civilian hospital and kill every witness. Yes. Clara stared at Dom for a long moment. The man who had destroyed her world, the man who had just handed her the key to exposing the people who ordered that destruction. Thank you, she said. He looked away. Don't thank me. I'm the reason 5 good people are dead. You're also the reason 800 people might survive the next 90 minutes. She turned toward the door. I need those names on record. Tierney is going to send in a military JAG officer with a recording device. You tell them everything. Every name, every date, every location, everything. And my daughter? Clara stopped with her hand on the door handle. I gave you my word, Dom. I don't leave hostages behind. She pulled the door open and walked into the hallway. Tierney was waiting. Annapolis extraction is being coordinated, he said. Naval Special Warfare is closest. They can have a team on site within 40 minutes. That's cutting it close. It's the best we can do. Clara nodded. What about the incoming team, Sinclair's people? 83 minutes, maybe less if they push the pace. Clara looked down the corridor, nurses moving patients, orderlies pushing gurneys, a young mother carrying a toddler toward the elevator, completely unaware that armed men were heading toward this building with orders to make sure nobody inside walked out alive. Then we have 83 minutes to get ready, Clara said. Tierney studied her face. Briggs, you're a combat medic. You're not a tactical commander. No, she agreed. But I'm the only person in this building who's been ambushed by these people before and lived. She looked at him. I know how they operate. I know their entry patterns. I know their communication protocols. And I know that Sinclair is precise, methodical, and arrogant enough to believe his plan is already airtight. And, Clara's jaw set, that arrogance is the only advantage we have. 12:01 p.m. She walked toward the elevator, mind already mapping the building's layout, the entry points, the choke points, the places where 4 Navy guards and a handful of hospital security officers could hold against 12 trained killers long enough for help to arrive. She pressed the button for the ground floor. The doors closed. Clara caught her reflection in the polished metal, scrubs torn at the shoulder, bruises forming on her neck, blood on her knuckles, eyes that belonged to someone she hadn't been in 6 years. Not a nurse anymore, not hiding anymore. Viper Squad's last operator, standing between 800 innocent people and the men who were coming to erase them all. The elevator doors opened onto the ground floor, and Clara stepped out into a hospital that had no idea it was about to become a battlefield. Nurses pushed medication carts. A family huddled near the vending machines. An elderly man in a wheelchair waited by the discharge desk, holding a bouquet of flowers someone had brought him. Clara walked past all of them and straight to the main security office. 12:04 p.m. The head of hospital security was a man named Frank Delaney, 58 years old, former Baltimore PD, 22 years on the force before retiring into private sector work. Clara had spoken to him maybe a dozen times in her years at Ridgemont, mostly small talk during shift changes, once about a patient who had become combative in the ER. She had never spoken to him the way she was about to. "Frank," she said, pushing through his office door without knocking, "how many guards do you have on shift right now?" Delaney looked up from his desk, startled. "Briggs? I thought you were—" "How many?" He blinked. "7, plus 2 on the parking garage." "Armed?" "Tasers and pepper spray. 2 of them carry sidearms." "Why? What's happening?" Tierney stepped in behind her. "Mr. Delaney, I'm Commander Jack Tierney, United States Navy. In approximately 78 minutes, a private military team of 12 armed operators will attempt to breach this facility. Their objective is to eliminate everyone inside who has had contact with a classified toxin that was used in an attack on a military officer this morning." Delaney's face drained. He looked at Clara, then at Tierney, then back at Clara. "You're serious?" "Dead serious," Clara said, "and we need your help." 12:09 p.m. Clara spread a building schematic across Delaney's desk. She had pulled it from the maintenance office on her way down. One of the benefits of knowing a hospital inside out after 12 years. 2 entry points that matter, she said. The emergency department entrance on the south side and the loading dock on the north. Sinclair, the man leading the assault, will split his team. 1 group through each entrance. They'll move fast, floor by floor, sealing exits behind them. "How do you know their tactics?" Delaney asked. "Because the man who planned this operation is sitting in a room upstairs with zip ties on his wrists, and he told me everything." Delaney stared at her. "Who the hell are you, Briggs?" "Right now, I'm the only person who can keep this hospital from turning into a mass grave." She pointed at the schematic. "Frank, I need you to lock down every entrance except 2. Leave the ER and the loading dock open." "Open? You want them open?" "If we lock everything, they'll breach through windows or walls, and we won't know where they're coming from. If we leave 2 points open, we control the flow. We know exactly where they'll enter, and we can be waiting." Tierney leaned in. "Briggs is right. Channeling their entry gives us the advantage. They expect chaos. We give them a funnel." Delaney ran his hand over his face. "I've got 7 security guards, 2 with sidearms, against 12 military operators. You've also got 4 Navy personnel," Tierney said. "And me." "And me," Clara added. Delaney looked at her torn scrubs, the bruises on her neck, the raw knuckles. "No offense, Briggs, but you look like you've already been through a war today." "I have, and I'm still standing." 12:17 p.m. The evacuation was the hardest part. Moving ambulatory patients was straightforward. Staff guided them toward the West Wing exits, loading them into buses and private vehicles that Tierney had coordinated through local emergency services. But the critical patients couldn't be moved. 14 babies in the NICU hooked to ventilators and feeding tubes. 11 ICU patients, including Lieutenant Brewer, who was conscious now but too weak to walk. Post-surgical patients on the 3rd floor who couldn't be disconnected from their monitoring equipment without risking cardiac arrest. Clara made the call that nobody wanted to make. The critical patients stay. We build our defense around them. A nurse named Wendy Palmer, who had worked the ICU for 16 years, stepped forward. "I'm staying with my patients." Clara shook her head. "Wendy, these men are coming with weapons. This isn't—" "I said I'm staying." Wendy's voice didn't waver. "I've spent 16 years keeping people alive in that unit. I'm not walking out now." 3 more nurses stepped forward, then a respiratory therapist, then an OR tech named Danny Reeves, who stood 6'4" and had arms like a dock worker. "I'm not leaving either," Danny said. "Tell me where you need me." Clara looked at the group of volunteers and felt something crack open in her chest that she hadn't expected. These people, civilians, caregivers, men and women who had never held a weapon, were choosing to stay in a building that was about to be attacked by trained killers. Not because they were brave in the way soldiers are brave, because they refused to abandon the people who needed them. It was the most Viper Squad thing she had ever witnessed, and not a single one of them knew it. 12:28 p.m. Tierney's earpiece crackled. He listened, then turned to Clara with an expression she couldn't immediately read. "Annapolis team is on the ground. They've reached the farmhouse." Clara held her breath. "Woman and child are secure. No resistance. The woman, Voss, is cooperating fully. She's requesting protective custody." Clara exhaled so hard her ribs screamed. "Get that information to Dom. Right now, he needs to know his daughter is safe." "Already done." Clara nodded. One piece of the puzzle locked into place. Dom's leverage was gone. His daughter was safe. Whatever happened next, that child would grow up in a world where her father's worst act hadn't been his last. 12:34 p.m. Clara positioned Tierney's Navy guards at the two entry points, two at the ER entrance, two at the loading dock. Delaney's armed security officers backed them up. The remaining hospital security staff covered the stairwells connecting the ground floor to the upper levels. It wasn't enough. Clara knew it. Tierney knew it, but it was what they had. She found herself standing in the main corridor, running through scenarios in her head the way Dom had taught her years ago. "War is chess," he used to say during mission prep. "You don't react, you anticipate. Every move your enemy makes is a move you already expected." Clara hadn't played chess in years. She was about to play the most important game of her life. Her phone buzzed. She didn't have a phone. It was Tierney's, which he had given her for coordination. The screen showed a message from Naval Intelligence. "Convoy spotted on Route 7. 4 vehicles, 41 minutes out." Clara gripped the phone and closed her eyes. 41 minutes. She walked to the elevator and rode it to the second floor. The guards outside Dom's room stepped aside when they saw her face. 12:39 p.m. Dom looked different. Not physically, the same hollow cheeks, the same dark circles, the same white scar on his cheekbone. But something behind his eyes had shifted. The guard had told him about his daughter. The news had done something to him that 6 years of deception and violence hadn't managed to do. It had given him a reason to exist beyond the mission. "She's safe?" he asked the moment Clara walked in. "She's safe. Voss is cooperating. They're both in protective custody." Dom closed his eyes. His chest shuddered. When he opened them again, they were wet, but his voice was steady. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. Sinclair's team is 40 minutes out." Dom straightened in his chair, the soldier in him surfacing through the wreckage. "What's your defensive posture?" 4 Navy, 2 armed security at entry points, channeling entry through the ER and loading dock. "That's not enough." "I know. Sinclair will send his primary team through the ER. That's where the general was treated. That's where the evidence trail starts. His secondary team will come through the loading dock to cut off the upper floors. He'll have a communications vehicle outside jamming local frequencies to delay police response." "Can we counter the jamming?" "Military frequencies won't be affected. Tierney's comms will work. But the hospital's internal system, phones, intercoms, security radios, will go dark the moment Sinclair's team activates." Clara processed this. "What about their rules of engagement?" "Sinclair doesn't have rules of engagement. He has objectives. Everyone inside this building is an objective." Dom paused. "But he has a weakness." "What?" "Ego. Sinclair has never failed a mission. Not once in 8 years. He doesn't plan for resistance because he's never encountered meaningful resistance. His operations are designed around fear and speed. Hit hard, hit fast, create panic, and let the chaos do half the work. So we don't panic. If you can keep this building organized, keep the staff controlled, and keep his entry teams bottled up at the choke points for more than 15 minutes, his timeline falls apart. Sinclair operates on precision. Make him improvise, and he gets sloppy. Clara turned to leave, then stopped. Dom, the JAG officer, did you give your full statement? Every name, every date, every location, on the record. Including Decker? Including Decker, his jaw set. Whatever happens today, that recording exists. They can kill every person in this building, and it won't matter. The names are out. 12:47 p.m. Clara returned to the ground floor and gathered everyone who was staying. Tierney, Delaney, the Navy guards, the hospital security team, the nurses, Danny Reeves, and a handful of other staff who had refused to evacuate. 23 people against 12 trained killers. She didn't give a speech. She didn't try to inspire them. She stood in the center of the lobby and said what needed to be said. In about 30 minutes, armed men are going to try to enter this building. Their goal is to kill anyone who can connect them to the attack on General Hope. That includes me. That includes every nurse and doctor who treated the general or Lieutenant Brewer. And it probably includes anyone they see on their way in. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. We can't outgun them. We can't outfight them. But we can outlast them. Every minute we hold them at the entry points is a minute closer to military reinforcements arriving. Commander Tierney has called in a Marine Rapid Response Team from Quantico. Their ETA is approximately 1 hour. We need to hold for 30 minutes after the assault begins. She looked at each face. Fear, determination. The nurse named Wendy had her jaw clenched so tight the muscles in her neck stood out like cords. Danny Reeves cracked his knuckles. Delaney checked his sidearm for the third time. Stay in your positions. Don't engage unless you have to. And if you hear the order to fall back, you fall back. No heroes. The patients upstairs need us alive. 12:58 p.m. Tierney pulled Clara aside. Quantico confirmed. Marine response team is wheels up. 55 minutes. Sinclair hits us in 25. That's a 30-minute gap. I know. Tierney hesitated. Briggs, I've been doing this for 20 years. I've seen combat in 4 theaters. And I want you to know that what you've done today, what you've been doing since 9 o'clock this morning, is the most extraordinary thing I've ever witnessed from a single operator. Clara shook her head. I'm not an operator. I'm a nurse who got fired. You're Viper Squad, Tierney said. And right now, that's exactly what this hospital needs. 1:07 p.m. Delaney's voice crackled over the security radio. 4 vehicles approaching from the east on Route 7. 2 black SUVs, 1 gray van, 1 white sedan. They're turning onto the hospital access road. Clara's pulse surged. She pressed the radio. All positions hold. No one moves until they're inside the building. She stood near the ER entrance, positioned behind a reinforced nurses' station that she and Danny had turned into a barricade using overturned beds in supply carts. 2 Navy guards flanked the entrance, sidearms ready. Delaney and one of his officers covered the corridor behind them. The radio crackled again. Vehicles have stopped. 200 yards from the ER entrance. Doors opening. Clara counted her breaths. In, out. In, out. The way Dom had taught her before every mission. Breathing is your anchor. Lose your breath, you lose your mind. Lose your mind, you lose the fight. 6 personnel moving toward the ER entrance on foot. Armed. Body armor. They're in civilian clothes, but they're moving in tactical formation. Copy, Clara said. Loading dock team, report. A Navy guard's voice came through. Nothing on the north side yet. They're holding their secondary team, Clara said to Tierney, who stood beside her. Sinclair wants the ER team to draw our attention before the second group hits the dock. 1:11 p.m. The ER doors slid open. 6 men walked in like they owned the building. Dark jackets, tactical boots. Two of them carried cases that could have been medical equipment, but weren't. The lead man, tall, lean, with a military cut and a jaw that looked carved from concrete, scanned the empty lobby with cold, professional efficiency. Garrett Sinclair. Clara recognized the type instantly. Not the face, she had never seen him before, but the posture, the controlled arrogance, the assumption that everything would go according to plan because it always had. Sinclair raised a hand, and his team fanned out. Two heading left toward the registration area, two heading right toward the corridor, two staying with him in the center. Then he saw the barricade, and the Navy guards, and the weapons pointed at his chest. He stopped. For 3 full seconds, nobody moved. "That's far enough," Tierney called out. "United States Navy, you are entering a secured military installation. Stand down and identify yourselves." Sinclair tilted his head, an assessment, calculating, adjusting. Then he smiled. "Commander, I think there's been a misunderstanding. We're a private medical transport team responding to a—" "I know exactly who you are and why you're here," Clara said, stepping out from behind the barricade. "And I know who sent you." Sinclair's smile faded. His eyes locked onto her with the intensity of a man recognizing a threat he hadn't accounted for. "And you are?" "Clara Briggs, Viper Squad, the one you missed." The words landed like a grenade. Sinclair's team exchanged glances. One of them touched his earpiece. Another shifted his weight, a micro movement that told Clara he was reaching for something under his jacket. "Farrell told us everything," Clara continued. "Names, dates, locations. Fenn, Hale, Senator Decker, all of it, on the record. With military JAG, it's already transmitted." Sinclair's jaw tightened. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" "Call Decker. Ask him if his name is on a sworn statement sitting in a Navy JAG office right now. Ask him if Farrell's daughter is still at the farmhouse in Annapolis. Because she's not. She's in protective custody, which means your leverage is gone, which means Farrell has no reason to stay quiet, which means everything you came here to bury is already in the light." 1:15 p.m. Sinclair didn't move, but his team did. Subtle shifts, hands adjusting, eyes darting. They were trained men, but they hadn't trained for this. A target who knew their entire playbook and was reading it back to them in real time. "Your secondary team is sitting outside the loading dock right now," Clara said. 6 operators, waiting for your signal. But there are 2 Navy guards and an armed security officer behind a reinforced position on the other side of that door. They have orders to hold until a Marine rapid response team arrives from Quantico. That team is already airborne. Sinclair's eyes narrowed. "You're stalling." "I'm giving you a choice." Clara stepped forward. "You can try to take this building. Maybe you succeed. Maybe you kill everyone inside. But you won't get out before the Marines arrive. And when they do, they'll have Farrell's statement, General Holt's testimony, and 12 dead or captured contractors linked directly to a sitting United States Senator." She took another step. "Or you can walk out that door right now, disappear, the way you've always disappeared, but this time you do it knowing that the program is over. VX7 is over, and the people who funded it are going to answer for it, whether you're here or not." Sinclair stared at her. The lobby was silent except for the hum of the air conditioning and the distant sound of a helicopter approaching from the south. Clara heard it. Tierney heard it. And from the way Sinclair's face changed, he heard it too. "That's not my helicopter," Tierney said softly. Clara pressed her radio. "Delaney, do you have eyes on an approaching aircraft?" "Affirmative. Military. Looks like a Black Hawk, coming in fast from the south." Clara's heart pounded. Quantico was 55 minutes out. It had been less than 20 minutes since the call went out. This wasn't the Marine team. Tierney pressed his earpiece and listened. Then his face transformed. Shock, then recognition, then something that looked almost like disbelief. "It's the Pentagon," he said. "Direct dispatch. The Secretary of Defense's office saw the JAG transmission. Farrell's statement triggered an immediate national security response. Sinclair heard every word. His team heard it too. And Clara watched in real time as the calculations shifted behind Sinclair's eyes. The arrogance cracked. The confidence buckled. For the first time in 8 years, Garrett Sinclair was standing in a situation he had not planned for, could not control, and could not make disappear. 1:19 p.m. One of Sinclair's men broke first. He dropped his weapon on the floor, raised his hands, and stepped back. Then a second, then a third. Sinclair stood alone in the center of the lobby, surrounded by his collapsing operation, with the sound of rotor blades growing louder above the building. "It's over, Sinclair," Clara said. It was over the moment Dominic Farrell said the first name. He looked at her one last time, not with hatred, not with fear, with the hollow recognition of a man who had spent his career erasing people and had finally met the one he couldn't. He placed his weapon on the floor, raised his hands, and didn't say another word. 1:24 p.m. The Black Hawk landed on the roof. Military police flooded the building within minutes. Sinclair and his team were restrained, separated, and escorted into armored vehicles that appeared as if summoned from thin air. The secondary team at the loading dock surrendered without resistance the moment they saw the military aircraft overhead. Clara stood in the ER lobby and watched it happen with hands that wouldn't stop trembling. Not from fear, from the release of it. The weight she had been carrying since 9:03 that morning, since 6 years before that morning, was lifting, and the sensation was so foreign that her body didn't know how to process it. Tierney found her there 20 minutes later, standing in the same spot, staring at the front doors. "It's done," he said. "Sinclair's team is in custody. The Pentagon has issued arrest warrants for Walter Fenn and Margaret Hale. And the FBI is moving on Senator Decker within the hour." Clara nodded. She couldn't speak yet. "General Holt is requesting to see you, and there's someone else." "Who?" Tierney paused. "Director Keyes." 1:51 p.m. Raymond Keyes stood in the fourth-floor corridor outside General Holt's room. He looked like a man who had aged 10 years in 5 hours. His tie was loosened. His hands hung at his sides. When he saw Clara approaching, he straightened up, and she could see the effort it took. Not physical, but moral. The effort of a man trying to find words for something words weren't built to carry. "Briggs," he said. She stopped in front of him. "I owe you," he faltered, started again. "This morning I made a decision based on protocol. I looked at what you did, and I saw a nurse overstepping her boundaries. I didn't ask why, I didn't listen, I just reacted." Clara waited. "I was wrong." His voice broke slightly. "I was wrong about who you are. I was wrong about what you did, and I was wrong to let this hospital's hierarchy blind me to the fact that you saved a man's life while the rest of us stood there arguing about procedure." Clara looked at him for a long moment. She thought about the hallway that morning, the colleagues who looked away, the whispers, the doctor who said she always thought she was more than a nurse. "I was a nurse, Raymond," she said quietly. "That's not less than what I was before. It's more, because a nurse who saves lives on a battlefield and then comes home and saves them again in an ER doesn't need anyone's authorization to do what's right." Keyes swallowed hard. "Your job, it's yours. Whenever you want it, no conditions." Clara didn't answer that. She wasn't sure she had an answer yet. She nodded once and walked past him into the general's room. 1:58 p.m. Holt was sitting up fully now. The nasal cannula was gone. A military physician had cleared him for transport, but he had refused to leave until he spoke with Clara. "Sit down, Briggs." She sat. For the last time today, she hoped. "Farrell's statement has been transmitted to the Senate Intelligence Committee, the FBI, and the Department of Justice," Holt said. "Combined with my testimony files, we have enough to dismantle the entire VX7 network. Fenn and Hale are being arrested as we speak. Decker will be in custody by tonight. And Dom? Holt studied her carefully. Farrell will face a military tribunal. There's no avoiding that. What he did, the betrayal, the outpost, the attack today, those carry consequences. He also gave you every name you needed. Without his cooperation, your testimony files are just paper. I know, and I'll make sure the tribunal knows it too. Holt paused. His cooperation won't erase what he did, but it might determine whether his daughter grows up visiting him or mourning him. Clara's throat tightened. She thought about the man in the basement, the man who had fallen to his knees and broken apart in her arms, the man who had taught her everything she knew and then betrayed everything she believed in. She still didn't know how to hold both of those truths at the same time. Maybe she never would. There's one more thing, Holt said. Your file. Your real file. Viper Squad's entire operational record has been classified under a code word compartment for 6 years. As of 1 hour ago, the Secretary of Defense ordered it declassified and transferred to the appropriate congressional committees. Clara blinked. Declassified? Your service, your team's service, what you found in Syria, what was done to silence you, all of it will be on the record. Viper Squad will exist again. He held her gaze. Reeves, Gutierrez, Park, Mitchell, and Tran will exist again. Not as ghosts, as soldiers who gave their lives trying to do the right thing. Clara pressed her hand over her mouth. The tears came, and she let them. She didn't try to stop them, or hide them, or swallow them down the way she had been doing for 6 years. She cried for 5 people who had been erased, who had been reduced to classified files and sealed records and a truth that nobody was supposed to remember. They would be remembered now. 2:07 p.m. Tierney met her in the hallway one final time. The Pentagon wants to debrief you, full debrief, your operational history, your involvement today, everything. They're offering transport to a secure facility. Clara wiped her face. When? Whenever you're ready, helicopters on the roof. She looked down the corridor, past the nurses who watched her with something she finally recognized. Not awe, but respect. The kind of respect you earn by standing up when everyone around you is telling you to sit down. She walked past Director Keyes, who couldn't meet her eyes. She walked past the ICU, where Lieutenant Brewer raised a weak hand in salute as she passed his window. She walked past the NICU, where 14 babies slept in their incubators, breathing air that was clean because a fired nurse had refused to walk away. She climbed the stairs to the roof. She didn't take the elevator. She wanted to feel each step, each floor, each level of the building that she had fought through, bled through, broken through to keep standing. 2:14 p.m. The rooftop air was warm. Late morning had turned to early afternoon, and sunlight spilled across the landing pad in long, golden sheets. The helicopter waited, rotors turning slowly, the same Navy aircraft that had landed here 5 hours ago and changed everything. Clara stopped at the edge of the pad. She thought about 9:03 a.m., the stretcher coming through the trauma bay doors, the gray-faced general, the pinpoint pupils, the moment she knew, before anyone, before the machines, before the doctors, that the man was dying and that she was the only person in the room who understood why. She thought about the badge on Keyes' desk, the walk down the hallway, the whispers, the revolving door she almost walked through. She thought about Dom's hand on her throat and his voice saying, "You were always too stubborn to die." She thought about 5 names: Reeves, Gutierrez, Park, Mitchell, Tran. 5 people who would have a legacy now. 5 soldiers who would finally be honored instead of erased. Clara Briggs took a breath. Deep, full. The kind of breath that fills not just your lungs, but the empty spaces behind your ribs where grief has lived for too long. Then she stepped onto the helicopter, not as a nurse who got fired, not as a ghost who was supposed to be dead, not as a loose end that someone forgot to cut. She stepped on as Clara Briggs, combat medic, sole survivor of Viper Squad, the woman who walked into a hospital to change bandages and walked out having brought down a senator, a covert weapons program, and the men who tried to bury the truth under an explosion in the Syrian desert. The helicopter lifted off. The hospital shrank below her. The city spread wide and golden in every direction. And for the first time in 6 years, Clara Briggs was no longer hiding. She was finally, completely, unmistakably found. If this story made you feel something, then please subscribe. These stories take time, heart, and everything I have to bring to life. Your subscription tells me you want more.